Less than 1 hour away from the return of the Europa League and only a little while longer until today's marquee match, a rare single elimination round of 16 clash between Inter and Getafe in Gelsenkirchen. Plus, the transfer window is open, the transfer train is at full speed, and Spain to England becoming a very popular route. Ferran Torres now officially in Manchester, while Braithwaite and Reguilón could both be en route to London. Welcome to Sports Burst. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are. Thanks for spending part of your day with us here on beIN Sports. I'm Andres Cordero. Today marks the return of the Europa League in European football, with the round of 16 getting back underway. And joining me to talk about that is Eric Krakauer. Hello, Eric.
Hello. I'm glad that the Europa League is back. A lot of people make fun of me for enjoying that competition, but it's a good one.
Yeah, we looked just right past it earlier in the week, ahead to the Champions League kicking off on Friday and Saturday. And then all of a sudden, there's some pretty good games in the Europa League. Sevilla-Roma tomorrow, also a single elimination contest. But there are 4 games today in the Europa League schedule. One stands out above the rest, and that is where we will begin, in Gelsenkirchen at the arena of Schalke, a neutral venue for a rare single elimination match between Inter and Getafe, and two teams that were in contention for Champions League football. Inter Milan obviously much closer than Getafe throughout the course of the regular season. But after that interruption, Getafe coming back in, let's say, not the best of form for the Azulones, while Inter a strong finish in Serie A. Do you give Getafe any chance in this one-off single elimination match?
Yeah, I think you have to, based on the teams that they've beaten in this competition, including Ajax. Also, given what they were able to do in La Liga. And the wheels did come off after the resumption of the domestic campaign in Spain. But Pepe Bordalas is still the coach of that team, at least for this immediate future. They still have the squad, or for the most part, the squad that got them into Europe last season, and the one that almost, or it looked like, could have gotten them into the Champions League. So absolutely. Now, does it hurt that they've lost 3 of the last 4 in La Liga? Definitely. But with a little bit of time to rest, which, is a big help, considering that they're not the deepest squad, and I think that affected them in the end run of the La Liga campaign. But with a little bit of rest, I think motivated that this is something that they can really fight for, I think they have a chance. But Inter, unquestionably in very good shape, just missing out on the title by 1 point. Juventus pipping them to it and winning their 9th. And I think it needs to be noted that right now Inter are having a little bit of or having some problems behind closed doors, with Antonio Conte essentially throwing the club brass under the bus.
Yeah, it's actually becoming something of a regular occurrence for Antonio Conte, where his tenures seem to end with this sort of public meltdown where he does throw some of the ownership under the bus. It's been sort of the same scenario now at Inter, but on the pitch where things mattered, they've gone actually quite well, as you pointed out, for Inter of late. Last 3 games in the Serie A season, Inter beat Genoa 3-0, beat Napoli 2-0, and then beat Atalanta 2-0. So significantly better form. You mentioned 3 out of 4 losses for Getafe. Those were tough games as well, but the results weren't very good. A 3-1 loss at home against Villarreal, scoreless draw against Alaves, and then losing the last 2 games of the season to Atletico Madrid and Levante. I feel like they are such a momentum-driven team, Getafe, because they don't have sort of individual performers to turn a game for. Yes, they do have 3 really good center forwards that can all score goals, whether it's Molina, whether it's Angel, whether it's Jaime Mata. But I do think that it's one of those teams that don't have the individual performer to carry you through these performances. They need the entire squad to be on the same page. They were for the course of most of the regular season up until that break, and then they came back and things were out of sorts. They didn't have the goals in them that they had earlier in the season. Yeah.
100%, but it's also important to note again, and I alluded to this, that this was a team that had to be chopped and changed as the campaign restarted and came to that sort of sprint finish. And we've seen with Pepe Bordalas that, except for a few changes in the front line, that he doesn't change much of the 11, and he had to do that in La Liga. He won't have to do that against Inter. So you're going to see Bordalas pick his best 11. And when you talk about an 11 that is pretty much a team that knows exactly what they have to do, how to implement the game plan that Pepe Bordalas has built there over the last 3 seasons at that club. I think they can absolutely surprise Inter. But having said that, look, Inter, a team that finished the league really well. And Antonio Conte, I think, has something to prove here because a lot of people are speculating that he will be out the door and Max Allegri will replace him at the end of the campaign. But if he manages to do something spectacular with Inter, if he manages to win this competition, and I think they're certainly one of the candidates to win the entire competition, I think that maybe the decision makers in Milan will go, well, maybe we can deal with the headaches that he'll provide because he's actually winning something.
I think this will be a fun game because Getafe do such a good job of pressing the opposition in their own half and sort of backing you up. And I'd love to see how Inter deal with that pressure. A lot of the teams in Serie A maybe don't press quite as high as Getafe do, and it's much more of a sort of structurally sound defensive system that they're up against. And so I am curious to see how Getafe limiting Inter space could sort of change Antonio Conte's team a bit. I do think Inter are the odds-on favorites for this one just because the form for Getafe has been so poor since the restart. But it is a really, really fascinating contrast of style. Speaking of contrast, the format is sort of strange at this stage, right? Because there were some games that did have the first legs played in the round of 16 and some that didn't. Hence, the ones that did not have the first leg are a single elimination format in the round of 16 at a neutral ground, whereas in this same round of the Europa League, you do have teams that did play their first legs, and so the second leg is more normal, if you could call it that, even without fans. One of those is newly crowned Turkish champion Istanbul Basaksehir, who did play their first leg against Copenhagen back in March. Well, today, Basaksehir visiting the Danish capital with a 1-0 lead, thanks to Edin Vishka, who scored a late penalty in Istanbul. What can you tell me about the new Turkish champions in this matchup?
Well, first of all, they're a very good team, and the job that Okan Buruk did there after replacing Abdullah Avci has been tremendous. A guy who guided Rizespor to safety last season. Curiously enough, played for Inter for a number of seasons. He was a big star for Galatasaray, winning the UEFA Cup with Fatih Terim. So he knows all about European competition, and I think he'll know just how to approach Copenhagen in this game. The one question mark that I would have is that they looked very, very poor in the last game of the season, probably hungover from having won the championship the previous weekend. But a game like that does have a way sometimes of breaking a team's rhythm, and I think Buruk was aware of that because in the second half he put most of his starters in the game. They weren't able to turn the scoreline around, but they made it much closer. So I'm wondering whether that has a little bit of an impact. The curiosity between these two teams is that they're two teams that most fans in their respective countries don't like because they've been built by a lot of money. Copenhagen, a team that doesn't have as much following as a lot of the other traditional powers in Denmark, and Basaksehir as well. So it's two teams that don't have many fans but have a lot of money, and I think they have a lot riding as well on this competition, although Copenhagen perhaps a little bit more than Basaksehir since Basaksehir won their first title.
As always, we are monitoring your comments via the Facebook chat. Daniel Licome Jr. chiming in from Toronto, who said, hi from Toronto. Toronto's one of my favorite cities on the planet. It's the reason that comment goes first. Andrew Contura, looking forward to seeing Bruno work that Portuguese magic. John Ice says, won't be easy for Inter. Getafe always make it hard. While Jaben Kurama says, my money is always on Spanish teams when it comes to European soccer. Usually a safe bet.
Particularly in this competition.
Yeah, one of our producers here at beIN Sports, Brice, is also chiming in on the chat, said, oh, please, Eric, Inter will dominate this one.
Yeah. Brice, a huge fan of Inter. That's all he posts about on Facebook, by the way. And I don't think it will be all Inter, although I agree with you that they are favorites, and I think they will be able to get the result here. I also think, and I didn't say this before, Dre, but I think you'll agree with me, that Getafe defensively actually have the personnel to stop the type of game that Conte employs with two wingbacks, because they essentially play with four fullbacks, two on either side. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup without a doubt.
And I hope it's not a repeat of the last time I remember watching Getafe, where it wasn't just that they had the two fullbacks on both sides, but they also had three holding midfielders. I believe it was at the Real Madrid game. I think they played with two fullbacks on either side plus three defensive midfielders. it did not make for very pleasant viewing. By the way, congratulations to Fulham as we move on, and congratulations to U.S. international Tim Ream. The Cottagers making an immediate return to the Premier League following yesterday's promotion playoff final win over Brentford. It finished 2-1 at Wembley, all 3 goals scored in extra time, and that includes an unlikely brace by Fulham left-back Joe Bryan. The first goal by Bryan is worth looking into here because he catches the goalkeeper cheating from about 40 yards out and sneaks it in on his post. Player who I believe had scored 3 goals all season long scores a brace in the championship promotion final to send Fulham back up to the Premier League.
Yeah, it was such a horrible game, by the way, until we got into extra time, and particularly that second half. The first goal, a lot of people are pointing the finger at the goalkeeper. I can't think of his name. They're claiming that he was poorly positioned. He was expecting a cross, and very few players are going to try and take that shot from about 40 yards out. And when they do, chances are that they're going to either miss the target or not hit it hard enough, and so the goalkeeper is going to be able to compensate for his positioning and make the save. But what Joe Bryan does with that free kick is simply spectacular. 40 yards out, hits it with tremendous accuracy and pace, and scores a memorable goal, not only in his career, but in this in championship finals. And the second one is also a really good combination with Aleksandar Mitrovic, who had come off the bench in the end of that one to make a difference. And based on what we saw in that game, I think Fulham deserved to go back in the Premier League, although I feel bad for Brentford.
Yeah, it was pretty dreadful through 90 minutes, and then all of a sudden came to life in extra time. All 3 goals scored after that 90-minute mark, made for good fun, and actually happy that it wasn't decided on penalties, that it was through the run of play. This is now the new kit portion of our program. Just a couple to show you on today's edition, and we'll begin with Manchester United's new home strip for the 2020-2021 season, and it is fine. It's just fine. Take a look.
I need to check it out because I haven't really seen it. Yeah, you know what? They've been missing the mark over the last few seasons. I don't like the DNA marks that it has there on the front, but yeah, not a good look. It looks like an abstract painting.
It's not bad. It really, it's fine. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not bad. At least it has a little detail. Remember the France shirts ahead of the World Cup had the same, although I believe it was a different manufacturer, I'm not 100% sure, had the same sort of little hand-drawn little stitching on it. It adds something. It looks sort of textured, but it's sort of unadventurous and not all that great. One that is more adventurous and I think a lot more great. Just one last point on the Manchester United one. I think this might just be my own bias. It's the sponsorship logo I'm not a huge fan of either.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this one from Valencia, this is the 3rd kit from Valencia this upcoming season. I actually love this one. It's like a 1990s trapper keeper became a footballing shirt.
I'm not a big fan. It's better than the Manchester United one. Look, when it comes to these kits, I'm pretty simple. I like simple kits, and these are certainly very far from it. But I guess what's happening now is that they've run out of ideas, so they're just experimenting. But not a winner for me.
Does anyone know what a trapper keeper is? Is that still a thing? Like, can you go to the store and buy a trapper keeper anymore?
Not particularly, no. I have no idea.
It looks like a 1990s trapper keeper. Google it, I guess.
Our producer knows what you're talking
about. So that'll do for the fashion portion of today's show. Let's get on the transfer train now, because 20-year-old Spanish winger Ferran Torres is officially a Manchester City player. He's just completed a nearly $32 million move from Valencia, has signed a 5-year deal after meeting with sporting director Chiqui Begiristain, the former Barcelona sporting director who followed Pep Guardiola to Manchester City. Or was it vice versa? Might have been vice versa. Ferran has been with the club, with Valencia had been since the age of 7. Without a doubt, he is one of Valencia's most promising prospects, or at least was. But there are a few red flags for me when it comes to Ferran. I don't doubt his quality. I don't doubt his talent. But the way that he's exited the club raises a huge red flag for me, Eric, because he's blasting the captain, Dani Parejo, saying Parejo was not a good captain toward me, saying that he had lost the joy to play for Valencia, again, his boyhood club. And for me, even if those things are all true, there's so much positivity to look forward to here with your move to Manchester City, to play under Pep Guardiola, to compete for the Premier League title, to compete for the Champions League trophy, that this sort of negative look back at his boyhood club is off-putting for me. And granted, he's just a 20-year-old. He's maybe not the most mature player just as a person at this stage in his career. But the other thing for me is I would have loved to have seen him grow a bit more at Valencia to become one of their most important players. I think he was an important player for Valencia. I'm not sure he was one of their most important, save for a short spell toward the final stretch of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that last point that you made. Certainly a guy with an incredible future ahead of him. And the Marca interview that he gave, what was it, yesterday, did not paint him in the best light possible. But I think that the fact that he was so candid, I guess that's one way you can put it, has a lot to do with how his departure has been received by the Valencia faithful, particularly if you look at the tweet and his Instagram post and you look at the comments. They're not very kind to him. So I think he felt like he needed to set the record straight, at least according to him, and that's why he said these things. But I don't even think that the Dani Parejo comments are the most troubling. I think there are other red flags there. For example, he said that if the club wanted to extend his contract, then that Peter Lim, the chairman of the club, had to be there himself during not the negotiations but the signings. He also said that he earned the third highest, at least the third highest salary at the club, which I don't agree with. And to your point, maybe not within the 5 best players at the club right now. He would have been had he stayed there.
See, I would put Dani Parejo ahead of him. I would put Rodrigo ahead of him. I would put Gonzalo Guedes right alongside him, even though Guedes had a bit of an injury-interrupted season and had for some time. I think Kang-in Lee is another player who's a very good prospect for Valencia.
But also problematic, according to the interview. So he had a run-in with Dani Parejo as well.
Listen, Valencia as a club are quite problematic now, right? They fired a very popular manager in Marcelino after he won the Copa del Rey for them. They had refused to talk to the press ahead of some Champions League clashes earlier this season because of that instability at the club. There's been the infighting with the ownership in Singapore and the day-to-day leadership in Valencia. So I think as an institution, I could understand why someone like Ferran Torres, even though he's been there since the age of 7, would want to get away from I would say not quite a dumpster fire, but the difficulty currently at Valencia. So it's understandable from that perspective. But I just feel like this is a player who still has some developing, some growing to be done. And granted, he may do that in the Premier League. He may do that at Manchester City. I'm just not 100% convinced that he would be a starter next year for City. He would be a starter for Valencia.
Well, he's only 19 years old, right?
20.
So 20. So he still has time. But if Pep Guardiola is going to bring him over, I think he has some plans for him. But there are 2 points that I want to make about him and his extra points that I want to make about him and his departure. The Dani Parejo situation is really interesting in that apparently their issue was not only the fact that Ferran Torres wasn't happy with the way that the captain treated him, apparently not really talking to him when he, as a 17-year-old, he made the jump to the first team, but also in relation to their relationships with Marcelino. Parejo loved Marcelino, one of his all-time favorite coaches, and Ferran Torres apparently behind the scenes had some issues with the fact that Marcelino didn't make him an automatic starter, and so that created the friction between the two. But what's also interesting is that Dani Parejo apparently has been transfer listed by the club, and I wonder if that is sort of retaliation for what happened with Ferran Torres, because there is no doubt that Valencia wanted to keep Ferran Torres. But here's another point about the winger who's now departed, is that he wanted to be made captain as a 19-year-old in that club, and he alluded to El Niño Torres with Atletico Madrid as being a very young captain who took that team forward. So there's certainly a narcissism there that I think is the red flag that you mentioned for Manchester City.
Illusions of grandeur, right? So the latest bust-up between Parejo, who was the actual captain, and Ferran Torres, who very much wanted to be captain, was after the Valladolid game. The players were supposed to get together for a training session. Ferran had refused to train, and Parejo reportedly told him that either you train or you never play for this club again. Apparently, Dani Parejo seemed to have sort of the interest of the club in mind, whereas Ferran Torres more individualistic. Again, he's 20 years old. He'll grow and he'll develop. At least we hope, because in terms of talent, he's one of the most talented young Spanish wingers currently. More from the transfer train. Less than 6 months after he signed a 4.5-year deal with Barcelona, Martin Braithwaite rumored to be close to signing for West Ham. Catalan sports daily Mundo Deportivo claiming that Hammers are in advanced negotiations, quote-unquote, advanced negotiations, to sign a Danish striker for a fee around $23.5 million. Now, when Braithwaite signed for Barcelona, there was already the report that his agent and the club would work to finding a permanent solution for him down the road that maybe wasn't at Barcelona, which is why that 4.5-year deal sort of jumped out as a little bit fraudulent. But is this a good move for Braithwaite? Or should Barcelona perhaps have made more of a commitment to keeping a player who could be that plan B if they can't sign or can't afford a player like Lautaro Martinez?
I think that's a tough question to answer because although Braithwaite had a few games where he certainly made a difference in that front line for Barcelona, I'm not sure if he showed the consistency. Then again, neither did other players on the team to warrant his staying at the club. He's familiar with the Premier League. He played for Middlesbrough even when they were relegated, so it's familiar territory for him. I'm assuming that he also will get an upgrade in his salary. So I think it's a good move for him, and we know that Barcelona are in financial dire straits, so perhaps this is the only option that the club really has, is to sell him, particularly at 29, when he still has a few years ahead of him. So I think overall it's probably the best decision for both parties, but he will probably feel a little bit aggrieved because only a few weeks ago he was saying that his future was in Catalonia.
Just a quick glance at the comments here. David Martin asks, what is a trapper keeper? To which Arturo Ruiz responds, a goalkeeper who traps. And I think, wrong answers only. What is a trapper keeper in your comment section? Mo Sadi asks, a question for you guys. So is Ferran allowed to play in the next Manchester City game, or does he have to wait until the season is completely over? The next Manchester City game is in the Champions League. He is not inscribed in their Champions League roster, so he would not be featuring for Manchester City in their next game against Real Madrid, by the way, with City leading that one 2-1, and that second leg at the Etihad. No Sergio Ramos, also he's suspended. Lorena Rivas says, sounds like a narcissist attitude from this kid in respect to Ferran Torres. Juben Kurama asked, who is he going to bench at City? And so can't bench him because he's gone now, but it was Leroy Sané's departure, or reported departure to Bayern Munich, that opened the door for Ferran Torres to join Manchester City. I have the same question. I think there's a lot of sort of established veteran players on that City team. Ferran is going to have to wait his turn. Juben Kurama also follows up with Barca needs to give him another chance in respect to Martin Braithwaite. My only question there, Eric, is I don't know who Barcelona will have as center forward options because they sold the kid Carlos Perez to Roma, signed Martin Braithwaite, who's now on his way out, don't have the money to lure Lautaro Martinez. So why are you getting rid of players without having replacements for them?
Well, I guess we have to wait and see whether they do have a replacement for him. They also sent Bel Ruiz to Braga, right? They didn't count on him, and he's a good player, and it looked like he had a pretty good future at Barcelona if he were given a chance, just like Perez at Roma. But I don't know. Look, you would think that if they're going to sell him, they have a replacement in mind, unless they're going to continue their pursuit of Lautaro Martinez, which I don't think will ever materialize. But given the decisions that this board has made in the past, it doesn't give you much confidence.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not treating Martin Braithwaite as he's like legitimate competition for Luis Suarez. I think he's a decent squad player who gives you some things that Barcelona don't have elsewhere in that squad. Jude Patrick Alexis says Braithwaite only impressed in a couple of games, though he wasn't given many chances. I would have kept him still, so it's possible. It's a financial decision, as Eric said. The most likely scenario is that Barcelona trying to make the books work, which also explains the Pjanic for Artur deal. I mentioned advanced negotiations a moment ago. Well, that's also the term being used regarding Sergio Reguilón's reported move or rumored move to Chelsea. Reguilón spent the season with Sevilla on loan from Real Madrid. Now Chelsea are said to want to scoop him up either on loan or on a permanent move for a fee reportedly around $30 million. Would you like to see Reguilón move to Chelsea?
No. I want to see him stay at Sevilla because he was just so impressive with that club under Lopetegui. And I would be very surprised if Real Madrid sold Reguilón because Marcelo is not getting any younger. It looks like Mendy is going to be the future starter, but Reguilón proved, I think, in this campaign that he could be one of the best left backs in Europe. Having said that, Chelsea are desperate for a new left back, and I don't think I would go for anybody else other than Reguilon because of what he is able to do on both sides of the ball.
And they do have Marcos Alonso in that position, but they want somebody to compete with Marcos Alonso for the starting spot. This one, not really much to discuss here because it's sort of a non-move, but Manchester United's bid to sign Jadon Sancho reportedly stalling, with United said to be unwilling to meet Borussia Dortmund's asking price of around $140 million. I think it's clear here, just pay the money, right?
Yeah, they're just doing exactly the same thing they did with Sporting insofar as Bruno Fernandes is concerned. I think he'll end up with the Red Devils.
Yeah, Kingsley Coman is seen as a potential replacement if they can't get the Jadon Sancho move done. Perhaps they go to the Frenchman from Bayern Munich. Coming up later today, Paris Saint-Germain playing a friendly against Sochaux of the second division in French football as Paris gear up for their match against Atalanta. One reason to tune in for this, Xavi Simons, the young former Barcelona product, is on the matchday squad for PSG. In that match, Eric Krakauer will be on the call for that with me. We'll see you on that broadcast later today. That's all for Sports First. So long.